Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Weather to Watch. It is Saturday, the 3rd of May, 2025. Our tour of the weather today starts with the water vapor satellite loop, which is good at finding squirrels, and increasingly this week we're going to see a lot of them, both spinning cyclonically and anticyclonically, so low pressure areas and high pressure areas. And you can see how this identifies dry air, and you can see it doing so on the backside of jet streaks, like right here, and out in the Atlantic, pretty dry air, which is kind of unexpected, really. It just means there's sinking motion there, and you can trace some dry air through the northern plains, and that is a sign that there's high pressure developing up there as well. Let's switch to the visible satellite. Always fascinating to me to watch cumulus fields like this one right here swirl around. You can see the swirl of one of those storm systems right there. Thunderstorms that are forming over the four corners are actually drifting this way on the northern and northeastern side of another one of those swirls. And the most active weather is the shower and thunderstorm bands that are apparent right there. We'll take a look at radar here in a second. If we look at the 500 millibar flow, sure enough, there's one of those lows right there. It's kind of stacked up on itself, occluded, so it's not going to move a whole lot, and that's a theme that you should get used to. This system that's approaching the west coast here is going to close itself off too, and then this high pressure area, which actually it's right here now, is going to move northward at high pressure ridge, and that is going to create a pattern of blocking for much of the U.S. this week. Surface weather map has a long cool front with little waves along it, but this stretches all the way from Maine down to Louisiana. And as you saw, the active cloud cover, showers, and thunderstorms are connected with this weather system for the most part. Another cold front draping down through southern Canada, a series of weak fronts out here in the west, and high pressure, cool high pressure right here. In fact, pretty cool winds blowing on the backside of this with subnormal temperatures, below normal temperatures. And I'll show you that for today and for the next couple of days coming up in the video here in a little bit. Let's turn our attention out east here, where we see a pretty active pattern. There's that swirl in the upper atmosphere center just south of St. Louis, and you can see the bubbling of showers and thunderstorms, several lines of them really. It is pretty unstable out ahead of this, not terribly unstable, but enough. We see 1,500 capes, which is, more than adequate to produce a good updraft in a severe thunderstorm, all else equal. The highest capes, though, are coming in off the coastal areas of northeast Florida and nosing their way into South Carolina and also down here in the Florida Panhandle. And indeed, that's where some of the more active thunderstorms are. But let's take a look at radar and confirm that. Here's a radar tour starting in New England, New Hampshire, off of coastal Maine. Some of the heavier showers and thunderstorms right now are very rapidly approaching Boston, cutting right through Connecticut. More showers and thunderstorms backfilling now. That's approaching New York City. And some heavier showers and storms also coming up through Baltimore and coming up from Virginia and North Carolina. Some of those are kicking up their heels rather nicely, so it'll be stormy here pretty soon in Raleigh, already storming in Charlotte. And then the big line extends from Columbus, Ohio, all the way down through Kentucky, Tennessee. Gets pretty intense there, approaching northwest portions of Alabama and Georgia, especially Georgia, and then some pretty isolated storms, possibly causing some problems there from Mobile and just east of there. And that will be affecting the Florida Panhandle. And notice some of those cells there are actually coming ashore there, and some of those could be supercells. We'll keep an eye on that. I took a snapshot of the advisories here. We have severe thunderstorm watch areas. Those are the pink areas there and there with some warnings embedded in those. Of course, always remember this video is pre-recorded, so the warnings are pretty much expired probably by the time you get this. But I did want to note that along the squall line there were some tornado warnings active there in northwest portions of Georgia. So let's take a look at what those severe weather outlooks look like. A 2 out of 5 risk area is this yellow area here that stretches from Maine all the way down through much of New England and stopping that right around the middle of South Carolina there. And that's the better chance for severe weather, but anything in this darker green or yellow has a shot at it. And there's also some threats here for some isolated thunderstorms from Idaho southward into the central portion of Nevada and way out around El Paso. What about tornado risk? 2% risk here here and just about in the middle of that yellow area, that slight risk area, again, from New England down to northern Virginia. And again, Pensacola, southern Alabama, the panhandle of Florida. Notice we saw those tornado warnings there. So yes, tornadoes can occur with thunderstorms, even if they're not in an official tornado outlook. That does happen all the time. Here is Sunday's forecast. Again, the theme is stalled systems, and we'll explain that in a minute, but the severe weather doesn't really move much out to the east, except New England is now in the clear. Still have some severe thunderstorms possible in portions of Arizona. And by the way, I think I'll be able to put a link in the description that'll show you a more complete, comprehensive look at severe weather. This is issued every day, and you can watch that after this if you like. I probably put a link in the description, actually, because sometimes when you put it up in the corner here, I've noticed that it doesn't work for whatever reason. But consult that if you want updates for beyond Sunday for severe weather potential. Okay, we're going to do heavy rain. 3, 2, 1. Total precipitation over the next 7 days is healthy in downstate New York and through much of Pennsylvania and New England. And I'll show you why that's a good piece of information for them. And then still pretty wet out here in Oklahoma and Texas, and especially in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama over the next 7 days. They're expecting what looks to be about 5 inches or maybe even more in some locations accumulated over that 7-day period. I'll show you again the latest drought index. So these areas down here could really use that rain, and not so much down here though, but portions of Pennsylvania and Maryland could use that rain, so it's perfectly timed for them. Let's take a look at the high temperature pattern for today, and all the blues are below normal. The greens are even more so, and the numbers are showing you by how much. So St. Louis is about 12 degrees below their normal high temperature today. Similar readings in northern Ohio there, and many areas, even in southwest Texas, pretty cool down there as well. Meanwhile, the plains are under that developing high I was telling you about in the upper atmosphere, so they're seeing readings anywhere from the upper teens to the lower 20s above normal, and much of coastal areas of California, Oregon, and Washington, even inland a little bit, pretty cool. And this is out ahead of the weather system here, so that's going to change, as you'll see here in these next series of slides. So the high temperatures on Sunday, still a little bit above normal out to the east, but that front is nosing its way in. The cool conditions are still pretty prevalent in where you see the shadings of green and blue. And by the way, the numbers on this map are the actual highs. So the high in St. Louis will only be 63 degrees. The high in Indianapolis will only be 53. Very, very cool for the early part of May. Meanwhile, it'll be close to 90 in northeastern portions of Montana. That's all for Sunday. Going to Tuesday, the heat shifts to the east and backs off a little bit, and big temperature swings actually in Montana, a high of only 62, where it was almost 90 2 days earlier. And this is, if this looks a little patchy and erratic, it is, and that's because this upper level system I'll show you on the 500 millibar chart here in a minute has bubbles of low and bubbles of high pressure, and you can almost find them by looking at this chart. The high is right there, and these areas of low pressure are right there, so it's very interesting. On Thursday, still pretty cool in Texas and Oklahoma, and then the heat kind of returns to the northern plains once again. Let's take a look at that long-range model, see if we can make any sense out of all this. In this case, I'm just using the GFS model. I'm not using ensembles, and that's okay. What I'm really wanting to focus is how stagnant this weather pattern is. So if you look, you remember we were talking about that low pressure areas just around the St. Louis area. So we're finding that there at 500 millibars. Okay, that's to be expected. Now let's go forward and watch what happens here. So as we get into the week, we'll stop it right there. That's Monday in the afternoon, 2 days from now. So we've got this one area of low pressure right here over the Four Corners, another one centered over Cincinnati, high pressure building here in the northern plains, and this is what we call an omega block because it forms the Greek letter omega. And usually this kind of pattern is hard to unlock. It takes a while for it to break down, so everything kind of moves slowly. That's why if you watch my severe weather outlook video from this morning, you'll see the severe weather starts here and moves over 4 days from there to there. So it's not in any big hurry. That's just a reflection of what this system is doing. So watch this. I'll just kind of move this forward and play around with this. So this is Wednesday. Let's go a little bit further. Here's Wednesday morning. Okay, so this area of low pressure kind of dislodges. This one sits over the Kansas-Oklahoma border, and then if I go even longer or more farther into the future, watch this thing. Watch that low. I'm just gonna do this because it's just kind of fun. I watch this thing kind of spin around, and this is Sunday to Monday right in here. It's just like watching it. It just doesn't have any direction. Now this is what we call a deterministic model, one run. So a lot of times you do see sometimes anomalous behavior like stalling like that. If you were to look at the ensemble, it might smooth that out a little bit more, and that's fine. But it's just interesting to look at that. So if you're underneath one of these, you're going to see cloudy conditions, showers, maybe thunderstorms, maybe severe, especially on the side that's closer to the unstable air, like over here, for instance. But this is way out in the future. This is Monday the 12th. So yeah, it's starting to get into Fantasyland, but it does show you how the pattern is kind of breaking down a little bit. The stronger jet stream winds have retreated into Canada for now. And again, if you watch my severe weather outlooks forecast that was put out this morning, that video, it'll kind of speculate about when severe weather might kick back in to the United States. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.